Hey Kia, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for talking to me today.
Of
For our
course.
audience's sake, can you please tell us your name and your role?
Yeah, my name is Kiah Hufane, and I'm currently a regional superintendent supporting high schools and middle schools at a charter network in Brooklyn.
Nice. And so, Kia, when you think about supporting and meeting the needs of your schools that you manage, how what would you say are the most effective ways to do that?
I think this year, especially, a lot of my support has pivoted from more tactical action step planning and building into people leadership and crisis management. Initially, as a regional superintendent, the work that I do is supposed to be targeted towards driving uh, instructional outcomes for kids. And I learned a lot over the past year and a half around how I need to pivot just thinking about the instructional outcomes, thinking more about the work and the investment that goes into supporting our leaders and our teachers as they go about driving towards results.
Yeah. And you spent a lot of time in your career as a teacher, as a principal,
Mhm.
um, on the talent team, and now sort of running a district of schools. When you think about whether it be teacher training or leader training, what are some of the ways that you've been able to tackle this training to execution gap?
I've spent a lot of time going back to what feels very foundational. And so I've spent a lot of time working with leaders around what is your vision? In an ideal world, what is it that you want to see your school doing, your teachers doing? I think because of COVID-19 and because of all of the shifts in teacher shortages, leaders have started to lose sight of what their true goal is or what the true community that they want to create is. And so I've had to really spend a lot of time getting folks out of the immediate, this is what we can do right now, and going back to all things considered, what is the best possible school? What is the best possible outcome for your kids? So we spent a lot of time going back to vision building and thinking about if this is what we want to be true, given where we currently are,
Hmm.
what steps do we need to take to actually make our vision a reality? In the
Yeah,
past, I think we've been much closer to that, but now it's about regrounding folks in their why
yeah,
and regrounding them in what they signed on to initially do.
yeah. And let's say you have people who are crystal clear in what their vision is, and they can see it, right? But then, as you mentioned,
Mhm.
you have the teacher shortage, you have a learning loss, you have a lot of things that folks would say are stacked against leaders in their pursuit
Yeah.
of achieving their vision and their mission. How do you keep folks creative, if you will, to be able to think expansively about the right now and ultimately where they want to go while dealing with the reality, right? Which is they may have a team that's short staffed. They might have, you know, um, barriers that they didn't necessarily anticipate. Like, how do you help leaders think creatively, expansively, while holding fast to their visions?
I think the reality is that a lot of leaders haven't been satisfied with the state of education for quite some time.
Mhm.
And the pandemic has really set up an opportunity for folks to, at its best, we're creating an opportunity to really blow things up and start all over,
Mhm.
right? Really getting rid of what the old boundaries and barriers were. Um, I think at its absolute worst, it's felt like education is an impossible field to be in right now, and there's no way to win. And so, what I try to do with my leaders is get them to number one, be realistic about the guardrails that we have, right? As an organization, there are some things we can't change. We can't currently shorten the school day. We can't get rid of an entire content that we're teaching, but we do have control over how we teach our teachers. We do have control over how we reallocate our time to be more responsive to trauma informed practices. We do also have another opportunity to really step back and reset expectations for what gets us in the door every single morning and keeps us going. And
Yeah.
so, first thing I try to do is just be realistic. Yes, we have a lot of constraints, and we also have a lot of flexibility and a lot of room to play with. And
Mhm.
so, this year, we actually double down on making sure that our advisory, and it's what we call goal team time, is something that really allows our kids to take more leadership and initiative over what they're learning or what they're discussing in those spaces. We've seen some pretty amazing results because we've been able to shift our focus, and we've said so much is out of our control, but the
Mhm.
first 30 minutes of the day is something that we actually can improve and we can make stronger. So I think it's about being realistic with the challenges, and then also just identifying what it is that we want to go after and win on,
Yeah.
knowing we can't win on everything.
Yeah. And so in the vein of being realistic and but also trying to, maintain high standards, what questions have you been asking yourself as of late, as it pertains to either doing your job or about the sector at large?
Yeah. I've spent a lot of time asking myself, number one, how do I keep the bar for my staff high? There's so much around. I want my people to know that I see them and that I value them. And I want teachers to know that their principals and leaders see them and value them for the work that they do every single day. And I think it can be dangerous to just focus on that one component without actually saying, we still care about results. We still care about what our kids are able to do at the end of the day, the week, the month, the year. And so I spend a lot of time asking myself, am I leaning too much into the challenges that are here and not enough into, at the end of the day, what I'm here to do, which is educate students? Um, I ask myself that a lot. At the end of every week, I go back, I take stock in how my meetings with principals went. Did I actually say the direct and difficult things that folks need to hear in order to continue to press forward and in order to drive results? I also ask myself, am I grounding my conversations in data as much as I was in the past? I think this year more than ever, the instinct is to lean into feeling and is to lean into just continuing to check in and make sure people feel like this is work that they can continue to do over the long term. But the reality is, everyone wants to know that what they're showing up to do every day is making something better. And for educators, that means like, do you have concrete progress and proof that your kids are making? How
Yeah.
do you know that your kids have mastered things? I ask myself all the time, am I modeling that? And the honest answer is that at the beginning of the year, I wasn't. And so I
Yeah.
had to do a lot of searching into why I wasn't grounding myself in what mattered the most.
Yeah. And with everything feeling so reactive right now, I think it's easy to not take the time and the space to reflect and to ask yourself those difficult questions. And a lot of what you described just now are both technical and adaptive skills that all leaders should have in order to run their buildings
Yeah.
or their networks effectively. If you were to reimagine what leadership training looks like, what would you do differently?
I think that there has historically been an over reliance on technical skills, especially in the charter sector. There's resources, organizations are resource heavy, right? And sometimes we think that what we need to focus on is the what. Do my people have the tracker? Do my people have the tech? Do my people have X, Y, or Z? And I've caught myself, and I know as an organization, we've questioned, are we actually devaluing the investment in the how? It doesn't matter what resource or what tool I give you. I need to know that you understand how to use it and how to maximize it. Um, I think that's been the biggest challenge. I think when you take tools away from people or tools are no longer relevant, as so
Mhm.
many have become during the pandemic,
Yep.
you actually end up finding out, oh, we don't really know how to do this. We've always been relying on this one specific thing or this one way of doing things. And so we've spent a lot of time trying to reevaluate how do we lean more into the adaptive skills and
Mhm.
skills that have historically been deemed softer, right? Because those adaptive skills are actually what people who are the most successful right now are actually very in tune with the adaptive side of the work and less
Yeah.
so with the concrete technical pieces. They've got to
Yeah.
know the how.
Yeah, and the technical pieces are frankly easier to train around, right? You give them a
Mm-hmm.
resource and you literally, if it's paint by numbers, I'm being reductionist, of course. But if it's paint by numbers, you can sort of give someone who's brand new, and there are benefits, right, to having
Mhm.
resources that support folks, especially those who are more novice. But how do you go about teaching adaptive skills in the same way that you might think about teaching technical skills?
I think it's about not isolating the two. I think a lot of teacher and leader development is it's so nuanced. And I think sometimes we forget to highlight where we're actually taking the science and the art form and marrying them. And so a lot of the time, what I do is go back and look at professional development sessions or in planning for meetings with principals or deans. I step back and try to figure out what concrete skills am I building? And then what's the finesse that they need to use, right?
Mhm.
Like, how do we bring this to life? Um, a lot of it has to be done in my prep work. I know the meetings where I'm the most prepped are the meetings where I show up the most authentically and can model for leaders how I move between the science and the art. Um, and I think there's just a layer of acknowledging the two are not mutually exclusive. I have definitely been in the camp where I have over relied on my adaptive skill set and not valued the technical as much as I need to.
Yeah.
And I have leaders who do the same. I have leaders who do the opposite. And it really is just this constant push to find that middle ground because the truth is you can't have one exclusively without the other if you're going to see the results that you want to for students.
Yeah. And speaking of results, right? So my last question to you today is, how would you define or what makes an effective leader?
Wow, that is just such a tough question because there's so much.
Yeah.
Um, to me, an effective leader is someone who knows with absolute certainty why they get up and do this work every day. I think that is the first and foremost thing. This work is hard. This work is impossible in some days, and I think you've got to be sure of yourself and why you show up before you can actually ensure that anyone else is doing what they need to do. Um, I think effective leaders are also ones who are really in tune with their staff. If you know what your people need and if you know how they're feeling, then you are more responsive as a leader. Um, that being said, effective leaders are also the ones who have clear priorities for what they're going after, right? Now more than ever, it's easy to see all of the different things that you could prioritize or all of the different fires that are popping up.
Mhm.
And it pulls you away from what matters most. And when you start to lose sight of that, everything else falls apart.
Yeah.
And so I think effective leaders are also the ones who use their personal why, what drives them, and what they're in tune with their people on to set clear and intentional priorities that then they just go after and are unapologetic about going after. That doesn't mean they're ruthless. That doesn't mean they're mean. It doesn't mean they're dismissive. It means that they are clear. And if I do one, two, and three, my kids are going to learn. My
Yeah.
school is going to be in a better place.
Yeah.
Um, and so I would say number one, clear why. Number two, in tune with their people. Number three, have a clear set of priorities and they know how they're going after them
Mm.
and they know how they're going to invest the rest of their team in them.
Yeah. Well, that's three very clear markers of an effective leader. Kia, thank you so much for spending time with me today. I do
Of
appreciate it.
course. Thank you.
Thank you.